No, because I want to learn. And you only, you still have any? You need to write it?
I got a card today.
Anytime.
Yes, it's here.
Unless they tow it, then I'll need a.
And I can go to the Flying Pig after I drop you off.
I'm surprised.
Join the bird.
Do you have a speech or you're just gonna talk?
Oh, here she is. No, so then we're good because he's not coming.
No, I don't think so. They didn't tell her. I don't think so. Did you have this one? Was that it?
I thought it was you.
That was me, right? Okay, that was, they passed your name on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gone. Damn.
Mr. Chairman? Good afternoon. Notice of a public meeting of the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville will conduct a call meeting on Wednesday, January the 4th at 5:30 p.m. at the City Commission chambers. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. It is now 5:33. Mr. Chairman, you may call the meeting to order.
I call the meeting to order.
Next item is invocation.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation.
Honor and protect the flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one.
Next item, we have public comment. We did receive two public comment forms. First one is Jorge Santillan.
Good evening, Chair, committee members. My name is Jorge Santillan. I'm the Treasury Manager for BPUB. On behalf of our executive team, they asked me to, they were attending another meeting. They could not be here today. They asked me to share with you two resolutions dated back in 2019, one for the city and one for BPUB. Um, our interim GM was recently aware of these two resolutions, so let me share those with you right now. And in summary, these resolutions provide for annual meetings between the city and BPUB to achieve mutual objectives for the benefit of the citizens of Brownsville and to improve mandated financial objectives. Our General Manager's Office wanted to inform you that they will be contacting the city in the near future to schedule the first meeting. Thank you.
Next one, we have Erasmo Castro.
Good afternoon, Chair and CRC Committee. I haven't had the pleasure to assist any of y'all's meetings. Have been able to watch them online and had individuals that have come and have shared information in regards to, what has been going on. I think one of the things that is very important is to watch a lot of the city commission meetings. And it's important because you get a lot of information. And I think last night's meeting was very informative, I think, for the citizens of Brownsville, and should have been very informative to each one of you that are part of this committee, because it showed very, very clearly the things that need to be addressed by this committee in regards to the PUB board. I think the reason that we all know that the reason that this committee was resurrected was because we wanted action taken that would be, help the city commission and help the citizens of Brownsville have a little bit more control over PUB because of what they have done to us. They have taken from the citizens of Brownsville in the excess of 135 million of our dollars. There is no accountability for it. No one wants to fess up in regards to exactly how much money was taken. During the audit that the City Commission had requested for Tenasca, during that audit, we found out that there was mismanagement by the former mayor and by the CEO, John Brusiak, and other individuals in management. With that said, there was nothing that we could do as the citizens of Brownsville to hold them accountable. PUB board, the PUB belongs to the citizens of Brownsville, but we have no power over it whatsoever. The only power that can be affected is through the PUB board, and the only ones that have control over the PUB board supposedly are the city commission. Last night, it was a fiasco. It was a circus, the meeting. And it showed the flaws in regards to what the charter grants the city commissioners powers to do and not do. And the first thing that happened was we had one of our city commissioners who was absent from the meeting, so nothing could take place. There could be no vote to remove any single member of the PUB board, which is something that we have demanded and requested for someone to be able to do. It cannot be done. And then we come to learn that there is a conflict of interest because the mayor had a conflict of interest. Then there was debate between one and another. One of them didn't want to remove the individual that they had appointed. So there was no way we were going to get the supermajority. So automatically in that meeting last night, you could clearly see what the CRC committee needs to bring forward to the city commission and let them know exactly what needs to be done. With that said, I have faith that nothing will be done because of what happened yesterday at the meeting. There's going to be conflict and nothing will be produced of it. So please take into account yesterday's meeting, take into account the sentiment of the people of Brownsville. We've been hurt. They have taken from us and put measures forward. despite the fact that we may know that they're not going to do anything on it, but put it forward so at least we know who's voting for the citizens of Brownsville and who's voting for the special interest that has placed them there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Next item, we have presentation update work sessions. City Attorney's Office will provide factual and legal updates based on requests provided during any previous meeting as requested by the Charter Review Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody had a good New Year's. Welcome back. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is basically the update that our office gives at every meeting, is just to go over the amendments that have been proposed and voted on already by this board. As you can see, the first one that is up on the screen is basically just a language edit in regard to changing Article 6 to having it read as Article 4. The second amendment that has been proposed, it's actually in 3 parts. If you look at the bottom of the screen before you, it's replacing unanimous vote with the supermajority of the entire city commission, removing any board member with or without cause with a supermajority vote, no annual limits. And finally, any board member may be removed if she violates her fiduciary duty. The next one is requiring that public meetings with Public Utilities Board in regard to the topics of water, sewer, electrical, finance, general business be added to the charter, as well as the presentation or presenting for the budget for clarification and acknowledgement. And again, not to approve it, but to acknowledge receipt. And then my understanding is, since I wasn't at last week's meeting, but these were the 2 that were voted on by each of you at by the committee as a whole at last week's meeting. And the first one was allowing the suspension of board members from PUB or removal by the city commission for cause and with approval of a supermajority of the council. The council will review any suspension or removal within 30 days. And then the second proposal was an amendment allowing PUB board member to be removed by city commission for cause and only after charges have been filed and published and the member has been given a reasonable opportunity to defend himself or herself in an open public hearing before the city commission, basically just giving them a due process. The next part of our presentation is in regard to a reminder. There are only four, let me repeat that, 4 meetings left for you guys to bring proposals to City Commission. This one, the January 18th one, which is in 2 weeks, is like the other one in which we opened it up to the public and had public hearings on all of the agenda items so that the public could come before you all and speak to each item. It'll be the same format as it was that time on the January 18th. But today's, next week's, and then the 2 following after the 18th will remain in this format. 4 meetings. That's a lot of work, guys.
Item number 1, presentation and discussion on amendments recommended so far by the Charter Review Committee, including review of a voting spreadsheet.
Now, it's my understanding that the amendments that I just went over, the only 2 that were listed for from last week were the 2 that I believe Mr. Terina put on the meeting from last week. I don't have a copy of a spreadsheet, of a voting spreadsheet as to how you all voted on that to present to you today. All I did basically was just run through all of the amendments that have already been approved by you all. If you would like for us to put together a spreadsheet to be a little bit more specific, I can go ahead and do that, but I don't think that there is one that exists at this point in time. Does anybody have any questions on that? make sure to turn on your microphones.
I do have a question. I don't remember, is the city secretary able to confirm for me that in point of fact, we had a vote that said a member of the PUB board could be removed without cause? I remember lots of discussion about that, but I don't actually remember the vote on that. And maybe you can't answer it right now, which is okay with me. Perhaps you could research and just ask the city attorney's office to notify at least me, because I don't remember the vote being positive on that particular issue. It's
Yeah.
probably my flawed memory.
I do remember, and they can confirm, probably through, the minutes, but, I was the one who made the motion. And
you
there were some,
prevailed.
yeah, there were some people that, voted against it, but it passed.
Okay,
So-
I stand corrected.
Mm.
Disregard my request. Thank you.
Any other questions? I mean,
No,
we can,
guess
we
ju-
can always double check that too, Mr. Merrill, just to make
Yeah,
sure, since you have concerns.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, just since you were out, something that happened last week is that, the committee started, or some of the members started putting information together just to help in presenting to the commission. So that's where the spreadsheet comes into play. Even though we've voted and you already clearly identified here what we've already voted and agreed or passed, there was variations of some of these things, and some people wanted to make that, available to the commission to help them in their final decision. So that's where the spreadsheet and also presentation form, that they included. So
So,
I think there's an action later kind of related to that.
so is the spreadsheet that you all are looking for then only in regard to items that are being proposed to city commission, or those that were voted upon and struck down?
Yes, just that
that were proposed.
Well, do we really need a spreadsheet? It sounds like maybe too much information to be provided to city commission.
Yeah, so there was those two things, right? I think two members provided a PowerPoint presentation, which was, very good and
Did you
clearly
see it,
visually.
Jennifer?
And then
No?
there was also, I think Tomas, who had sent, an email to council, just kind of highlighting some other details. So, again, I think action one later is gonna address that. Ultimately, they'll consolidate and, maybe, a subcommittee can decide on, what the best way. In the end, we all agree that we need to do a better job in presenting to the commission to avoid any, confusion. Last time when we presented, it was still pretty early, and we were all doing our due diligence, which is part of the process. And even though that caused some confusion from the public, it's just a process that we needed to go through to understand all of the details. So now that we're focusing on, we want to be clear and state, this is what we passed. And if the committee agrees, which I'm open to, if they want to present additional information, this is what didn't pass. That way, at least they have visibility on the spectrum of that, so they can better decide.
Okay, that makes sense. Anybody else have any comments about item number 1 on the presentation update work session section?
I guess one quick question is, when are we, I don't know if we decide, or when is the best time for us to go back to the commission from these 4 next meetings,
Turn on your microphone.
Oh, sorry. I believe the next is their next meeting, which is,
the 11th?
no, it's the 18th, the 17th.
No, it's the 17th, the
Yes,
day
the
before your
Correct,
18th meeting.
before,
Okay, my bad,
before our
yeah.
meeting, the
Yep.
18th.
When is the final presentation?
Say that again.
When do we present everything instead of just an update?
That is,
That's the
Yeah,
day.
that's the other
my
17th.
understanding is that the January 17th is your final presentation. But then when you guys are finished with all of the proposals, that's when it gets voted on by commission. So your final presentation may come before all of the proposals that you vote on. Does that make sense?
Item number 2,
Oop, I'm sorry, do we not want to appoint any committee, subcommittee? That's item number, oh, I'm sorry, she said 1, we're still on I'm in the wrong, golly, it's a good thing y'all are here.
Item number 2, presentation and discussion related to technical and/or other amendments that are required to bring the city charter into compliance with federal and state law changes brought forward by the city manager or city attorney office.
Our office is requesting that this item be tabled to the next meeting because we do have some items that we would like to bring before you, but Mr. Trevino would like to present them.
Okay, motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have items for individual consideration. Item number 1, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to creation of subcommittees.
Yeah, I think that was mine. Just piggybacking off of what Geraldo said, we just need to have, I think we should put together a subcommittee just to figure out what we want to present and how. I think that your Excel document was great. Daisy and I, we worked on that PowerPoint. That's just the beginning. So I don't know if there's any other, I can't think of any other subcommittees just given the time constraints. But I think we need a kind of a presentation committee or something. We can call it that.
I mean, we're going to be the ones presenting. And I don't think by starting a subcommittee that we have enough time for them to run through everything.
Well, it's a lot of information and there's a lot of, we haven't been unanimous through this process. And so I think we need help. I need help figuring out how to present it in a manner that doesn't offend any of you in your ideas. I'm not trying to be like.
Yeah, and I don't think it was related to new ideas.
Yeah.
I think it was related to, let's take a look at what's already been voted on. And then the idea was to organize it in a way from, more authority or less authority or however you wanted to equate it, but you have to have a subcommittee that can meet outside of the confines of, being able to do it this way, that can then say, look, here's what's been voted on. Let's put it in a continuum that is easy understood as to, without cause to with cause, supermajority, without majority, so that we can see how that's developed. And then from there, if they do that, then we could also come in and say, you know what, there's a glaring, vacancy right there that, might be fit in with a new proposal.
Yeah. I mean, simple stuff like Daisy brought to my attention the other month that I presented last time, 2 years ago. I presented in a manner that's suggested something that really didn't happen. And so my understanding was wrong. And if we had some kind of subcommittee to organize the presentation and kind of approve it in some cleanse it, then I think we'd be better off at presenting the array of ideas that we've come up with.
Yeah, I think in the end, and referencing, the commissioners meeting yesterday, I think part of the issue is that the public wants to be informed, right? So in order for us to do that is just, we want to be clear in what we're presenting as opposed to just kind of talking points that could create additional confusion. So it's nothing more, nothing less. Obviously, the voting record is clear, as you just presented now, is just kind of highlighting some peripheral discussions that we've had that may be of interest to the commissioners should they want to, in their final decision, go, one way further out in one direction or the other. So I'm open to that. I don't really see an issue. I think we just wanted to formalize that so that we got, some people to spend some time on it.
Yeah, that's it.
Subcommittee is 3 people?
That's what I was going to ask. Do we have to, are we tied? We
It
constrained
would
to
be, yeah. So as long as you don't make a quorum, even though Toma
It'd be
is
2,
no, it would be 3.
3.
3.
I think the chair should be there. I mean, I could be there too, but then we just have one of you all.
So
David?
can we just clarify before you guys move on to whom, if voting on whom should be part of the subcommittee? The subcommittee that you all are recommending to create today is basically a subcommittee to assist with the presentation to commission on the 17th?
Yes.
Well, so the chair and vice chair will have, the ultimate decision on what gets presented or not.
No,
So,
it'll be,
right?
no, we as a whole,
Well, right, but the format in which it gets presented, right?
Right.
You will have, like, whatever, like, if there's a subcommittee, whatever the subcommittee gives you, you will still be able to edit that however you want. Because you'll be the one
yeah, which
presenting it.
which is the same thing that's gonna happen. Once we present it to them, they can change.
Your mic's off.
Well,
Your mic's
Oh, sorry.
right, so then a subcommittee can be any three members, right? Doesn't, because
Okay.
you will have authority to edit it anyway.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, it'll come back to us to vote. From the three here, then it's presented to us again. We'll represent it and see if we come up with something better that we had before, or like if it's from like Mr. Tejeda was saying, from supermajority to just a majority.
Well, let's look at it this way. Should the chair and the vice chair be on this subcommittee?
Should we
I
raise,
don't think so. to
should
be honest.
anybody raise their hands who, I mean, because we don't know if anybody's interested
Yeah.
in being in the
I can
committee.
nominate.
David, I would like to nominate you.
Since I'm the most outspoken, I would like to suggest this, Mr. Chairman. The continuum that was presented at our last meeting, I think was a great start, just a brilliant piece of work as a way to start the process for the presentation. In addition to that, the spreadsheet could be consolidated in such a way that you have the continuum and down below you have the bullet points that support each level of that. And what I hear proposed, and I thoroughly agree with, is the concept of having two or three people who are conscientious about it and willing to put the work in, go back to a meeting where they can complete that work for your presentation, therefore. And so, the work that they've already done, I wouldn't undo in any way. I would just enhance it. So I suggest that a subcommittee of three be formed, and that subcommittee be asked that between now and our next meeting, come with a presentation that makes sense, that the people of Brownsville will be able to say, yes, I understand it, and yes, I agree with that, or I hate that.
Okay, well then I'll move to create a lack of a better term, a presentation committee.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Now
Now, who's on it?
is,
I motion to appoint David Merrill as the chair of the subcommittee.
there's a motion for
The-
David Merrill. Is there a
He
second?
accept?
I second.
Does he have time?
There's not any more important work on my agenda than what's going on here. I'm flattered by the opportunity, but I want to make sure that the folks who originally drafted that are willing to share some of that responsibility. And might I say that I just recommend that the chairman be the one to appoint the committee. You don't have to take a vote. Mr. Chairman, I recommend that you name the two or three people and even an alternate who could sit in the corner and be quiet.
Which would the alternates would be either you and I. So I would say if Mr. Merrill, Miss Daisy, and Mr. Martinez would be on this subcommittee. And then we'll put Tomas as our alternate in case one of them can't make it. Because
And Mr. Chairman, that'd be fine with me. If I could ask a question, there's nothing that prohibits me from calling one of the members of this committee who is involved in that drawing and saying, can you give me, or do I have to run it through you and back to me to give me the template that they used?
No, you can go ahead and call them and get the template that they used.
Template and things like that, and
Right.
highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
Just as long as it's not four of us talking at one time.
Right. Well, and even so, with the four of you speaking at one time, the TOMA rules are laxed with this committee due to the fast pacedness. The commission did not include that as part of the resolution, that Texas Open Meetings Act needed to be followed. We're just trying to make it as transparent as possible to the public. So we're asking you not to have a walking quorum with the four individuals. But if you're just asking for templates or information as to what to include, it's not technically discussing city business. It's just putting information together.
Is everyone okay with that? Mr. Merrill? Y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. I know, and obviously, we just gave the chair the opportunity to appoint. I'm okay in participating, but I know you also, okay. And in the end, I think we all agree is just a visual representation of what we've been doing
Yeah.
to prevent any confusion and include peripheral information.
Yeah.
So,
Mr.
yeah,
Morales?
from my
Okay.
view, I'm okay with that.
Okay, Ms. Zamora, how about you?
I'm okay.
Okay, very good. So all in favor on our presentation committee being Mr. Merrill, Ms. Zamora, and Mr. Martinez, and our sub as Mr. Tejerina? We're okay? Aye?
All right.
Those opposed? We're good? Okay.
Second item, we have,
Wait,
Cons-
hold on, before we go on, with Mr. Cascos not being here, did he, send a message to table his items?
He did not send a message saying to table his items, but we would request that you do table his items since
Okay,
he's.
so let's
not here.
just go ahead and, table all of Mr. Cascos now.
You're going to have to make motions as you come up to each
As they
one of
come up?
them. Mhm.
Okay, not a problem then. Okay,
I-
I'm sorry.
item number 2, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to a recommendation to City Commission on the creation of a standing ad hoc city charter committee or board.
I make the motion that there be a standing ad hoc charter committee for the city commission.
Okay.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Did I steal any?
Huh?
I just like the idea. Let's-
Yeah, okay, all good.
Item number 3, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the contract limitations for the city manager.
Yeah, so, on this particular one, my understanding is there's a current, interim city manager, right? So there's, a committee looking, for a new city manager. And in that process, some of the areas of opportunity have been the, limitation on how many years a contract can be extended to a potential candidate. So currently that's at 2 years. And as most things, right, that has worked in the past. But I think now there's concerns that it might be a limitation with the idea of evolution and not revolution. I would be willing to make a recommendation to extend that to 3 years with the idea of helping that process in general, not just the current process, which might not even apply, I guess, because of the timing. But going forward, I think that would be a good practice for us to have I didn't get an opportunity to collect information on other city charters. But if people want to see that information, maybe we can table this and get more detail for the next meeting.
I think it's a good idea. I believe that the recommendation right now from, if I remember correctly, is an association of city managers, is that the minimum be 2 years. It does seem a little short. If you're, thinking about professionals who are, willing to relocate, a 2-year contract is not very appealing. So I think a 3-year minimum would be a good move.
Yep, and if we can get information for next meeting, I mean, maybe we can consider other options, but that's the general idea. And the other thing I'll mention is just that because we were given PUB priority, I didn't want to make some of these suggestions until later in the process. Once we were further along in understanding and agreeing on, what we were going to be recommending from the PUB side. So,
Well, in the interest of time, since we don't have that much, many meetings left, we could just take a vote on this now.
I'm willing to vote on it. Obviously, I'm the one who suggested it, but
Let me, well, let me just get clarification as to what you're considering here. I think it's contracts for services that the city commission shall have the authority to enter into an employment contract with the city manager and or city attorney on terms decided by the city commission, but which shall not exceed 2 years in duration.
correct.
And does that limit them from being able to give them an option to renew at the end of that contract? Or I guess, what exactly are you committing the city to enter into a contract with someone for a period of 3 years as opposed to an option to renew? Or
Well, the way I think about it is up to 3 years, right? So if they still wanted to do a 2-year agreement, they could. But I think the general trend is the longer, the better that reception, from possible candidates would receive that.
I don't see why we don't just go to 4 and just give them the option for 4. I mean, I think that the pool of people, if we wanted to attract talent, to your point, Daisy, I mean, 4-year contract sounds pretty good.
I would think that in order to make it attractive in this day and age for a real professional, 3 years would be the minimum, 4 years would be a lot more attractive. And I'm prepared to make a motion to support, or if you want to make a motion, that's fine. I think the way that we could handle this is with a motion and an action that we can then pass on for refinement if the city commission itself wants to do it,
Yep.
rather than us having to do the homework.
Yeah, again, once we present it, they may say, no, 4 years is too much, and they can, or just ignore, ignore the recommendation at any rate. So
Well, if they
I'm
wanna-
good either way.
If they ought to
So-
always be on a short string for everything that they have to do, but with a 2-year contract, I think.
Tomas, could you remind me, since you have it there in front of you, what article is it, or how would I make the motion? Do I have to call it out specifically, council?
So if I remember correctly, it states for personal services, specifically as to the city manager and to the city attorney's office. And it says a maximum of 2 years right now is the most that it can be for personal services. And that is to include the city attorney's office and city manager's office. But I don't have it right here in front of me.
all right, Article 5, Section 22, no contract shall ever be made which binds the city to pay for personal services to be rendered for any stated period of time except as provided below. All appointed officers and employees shall be subject to the personnel policy adopted by the commission, subject, however, to the provisions for civil service herein or hereafter made a part of this charter, provided that the commission shall have the authority to enter into an employment contract with a city manager and or city attorney on terms decided by the commission, but which shall not exceed 2 years in duration. I believe that would be the provision that you're.
Right, so I would say an amendment that specifically applies to the city manager, since that search is a lot more intensive. And
If it can't be separated, then I'm open to doing both.
I'm open to do both as well,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and maybe the
I mean,
motion
it's
is just
the same thing would apply, I think.
to increase the minimum for both city attorney and city manager. We could just leave it open-ended that way.
Okay, so I'll make the motion, to.
Hold on. On that, can we make a motion on extending also the attorney?
I mean, you can make that motion if that is something that you would like to do. It's the way that the item for individual consideration reads is as to the city manager, but the way that section 22 is stated, it says with a city manager and or city attorney in the second part. So if you're changing just the word 2 to 3, in that second section, you're fine. You're not making any recommendations as to the city attorney. And so a notice issue is not of a concern.
And that would apply to both.
If you were to just change that word 2 to 3, yes, it would just apply to both.
I think we should
And
do both.
if we apply the number 4, would it change?
Well, and that would be fine as well, whichever, I mean, you all vote on,
Okay.
right?
that might be too much. It would be too much of a change to do 4 years for both. Even 4 years for the city manager, I think is still a good idea. Just thinking of how the recruitment process is. The city manager, right, is the most important position in the city. And it's a very intensive recruitment process. So I don't think they're equal. So if we want to make, like
Separate.
yeah, we could just separate it if you're willing to do 4 years.
We'd have to draft it in a way that we amend the whole section to have be 2 paragraphs essentially. But,
What do you,
Or just change it to 3 years for both of them.
I think it's more of a cap, I mean, I think that if, we just have a 4, I mean, I think just 4, keep it clean, and then they could always maybe come up with that recommendation. But, I mean, I'm willing to do 3 though, for the city attorney, and then 4 for the city manager.
For me, having more job security for a person that's coming to take on the challenge of being our city manager, it would be more job security for them knowing that, you know what, I'll be here for 4 years.
I agree. I completely agree. But again, I think the city attorney recruitment process is very different than the city manager recruitment process. So 4 years for city manager does not sound like a bad idea, right? It sounds like.
Do you know, council, if they were to fire a city manager, would they be required to continue paying?
It depends on what the language of the contract says. So if I may make a suggestion, I'm not trying to sway one way or the other, but if you can table this till next week, it may be beneficial because part of Mr. Trevino's presentation in regard to some of the changes he would like to recommend to the committee will address certain aspects of the city attorney in this section specifically.
I move to table.
Well, we could maybe vote on the city manager section now.
But then you have to reword the whole section.
So move to table.
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, there's no rush.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Next item, we have item number 4, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the appointment of Bronson PUB Board of Directors by individual commissioners with approval from the supermajority of the city commission. 1 appointee per commissioner.
So here, I know we've had discussions about removing this courtesy that exists, right? So putting wording in the charter where we would not go with a one appointee per commissioner. But I think the concern is, and even here, I mean, obviously I would say, even though we've disagreed, we've had a lot of common agreement, right? So the issue is whoever makes the first motion, right? So if you have just who gets out of the gate first, that could change, the possible candidates that could be considered for not just for PUB, but for really all the boards that the commission set. So I think it does have some logic, and I think it would be beneficial just to work just as an ongoing working procedure for the commission. So I would, that's the reasoning. And I think it says here, appoint PUB board directors. But really, when I mentioned it last time, I was thinking like all of the boards that are appointed by the commission.
So you're asking for language in the charter to include that specific language?
So it wouldn't single out the PUB board, but just in general. And I think it would make it, even though it's maybe a little bit more work administratively, I think if that's across the board, then it'll be easier to manage across all of the different boards, in my opinion.
And well, just keep in mind too, that there are certain statutes that allow for only the mayor to be the person to make appointments and things. We have to make sure we're not going to be preempted by statute.
Yep.
So that recommendation, if we add language along those lines, would be fine. I don't see a concern with that, but it will be a completely new section within the charter is what you're suggesting, correct?
Yes, I would not change anything that stands specifically for the mayor. This is just for general boards appointments by the overall commission.
And
So that's the intent, and then obviously council would go through the details and figure out how to word that correctly.
And would you say that there is as it exists today, if we, for instance, decide to appoint BCIC board members as a city commission, as it exists today, it's kind of a courtesy among commissioners today as to who gets it, but it's not mandatory, but it's a courtesy. I don't object either way on that, except to say, I think one important consideration from my point of view would be that the city commission be able to appoint, the commissioner be able to appoint once he or she is elected to a full term, rather than somebody, if David Merrill drops dead on this during his term as city commissioner, which is not going to happen. I'm not going to die. But if that were to happen and have 6 months left on an appointment, that would be, I think that'd be a bad position to be put into. With respect for the concept, I would just say that I'll make a motion if y'all want to. I'll make a motion that says we should recommend to the city commission that PUB members specifically be appointed, one commissioner, one appointment, after that commissioner has been elected to a full term, and that if they decide to move that on to other commission, other elements, that's fine. We know we've been through some wholesale turnover on some of those committees, so already. So my motion would be specifically to PUB, one commissioner, one appointment after the commissioner is elected to a full term. That's a motion I can make when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
And what would that do to the current situation? Because if there's someone I assume right now that that's not the way it's done. So how would you then change the charter related to the city, the current appointments. And so then that would have to be changed as well, right? And so anything that we're doing towards the commissioner's ability to appoint would have to then reflect in the makeup of the actual PUB board members, appointments. And so I think we need to be careful as to how that's worded so that we don't get into an issue.
You're exactly correct, and it is a terribly important issue that we recognize that it could cause some unsettled impact on the board as it exists today.
Well, I would hesitate to argue, but that would be an ex post facto law. And I would say that more than likely that could be ruled unconstitutional as it's already in effect at the time.
So
Or it's
it
not in
wouldn't, it wouldn't
effect.
kick in until
Right.
the next cycle.
And that was,
Right.
my next point was going to be, as happened in the last charter or in the 1995 revision, where they actually even named a person who was going to go onto the board in the charter. That it's, a lot would depend on the language and how it was structured so that you could reassure people that we're not going in there with a wholesale abandonment or kick out. We're really going in there so that as we move forward progressively, we're adding this element. That's a matter of language.
And you also have to keep in mind that almost all the other boards and commissions that the city commissioners appoint on, they can remove them at will. It's really the Board of Adjustments is the only one that has a for-cause hearing that have to be brought before the commission to have a due process right. The rest of them are at will of the commission.
Right.
So I'm not sure that ex post facto would be an issue because when a new person was to say, take the at-large A position, they could say, I don't want that person who was previously put on in the at-large A positions appointment any longer on that board.
Well, then that would have to change the whole language of removal as well, right? Because that would all have to,
None of that is in the charter. In regard, not speaking as to the Brownsville Public Utilities Board, as to the general, as Mr. Martinez was speaking of, general boards and commissions.
right. But if you are looking at something like that with PUB and then we're making a recommendation that it's either for cause or whatnot, then having this come in and that removal is likewise going to have to be changed to reflect any changes to the appointment, right?
Right.
Now, that may be something that we could have the esteemed committee.
Yeah, I would
review.
like to table this because it should be a commissioner, District 1 at large, to where they can appoint someone that will follow what Mr. Cosco has come up with, that they have the curriculum of what we're asking, high school graduate, all of that. To where, but it should be, I've always believed it should be from someone from their district. And when whoever gets elected, because what happened this past year is a member got put on 2 months into a term at the end of the term, where they either were going to get reelected or not. And I believe that with the reelection, they would terminate that spot and give the incoming commissioner, the ability to at least have someone represent that district on PUB.
Mr. Chairman, it's a good point, and it's a risk. I guess what I would suggest is that what we're putting forward here is not the language specifically, but rather the concept that the commission can then direct, the city commission can then direct the city attorney to reconcile some of these conflicting views or some of these ancillary or complementary views that are actually that we've already voted on. So you could say, yeah, we kind of believe that we could make a motion to say, we believe that the city commissioner, once duly elected for a full term, should be able to appoint a representative to PUB, period, finale, a vote. The next vote might be, we believe that once that person is appointed, this should be in place, that they serve the same term as the commissioner and they can be removed only for cause or breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty. That can be a separate element. The city commission and the city attorney can then reconcile the best way to present that on the ballot.
Exactly what he said.
Please know.
I just, a quick question. The PUB board's members, they serve four-year terms, right?
4-year terms.
Okay, and so,
It could be a lot less if
and
this
so,
is in effect.
and then.
No, it would align to a 4-year commissioner term.
When, that way,
There'd
whenever,
be a lot of turnover, though, a
not
whole
necessarily.
lot of turnover at PB. And I think.
Well, not
part of-
necessarily because it's 4 years, but it's the 4 years of the incoming elected official. So they'll serve those 4 years
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they get their 4 years.
with the elected official. That way, every 4 years in that election, there's going to be either, if he gets reelected, he may keep the same PUB member or bring in a new PUB member.
See, but I think that's a problem because you will be increasing turnover a lot more
Well-
than it is now, because usually people will stay there for 8 years as board members, because it really takes you 4 years just to understand. Whenever you're overseeing a large organization like PUB, it will require you years to get, just get really like better into what is going on, because you're a volunteer, right? You're only doing, a few hours a month. It's really like how long does it take us, like, to read the charter and understand what is happening? And part of why it's a good idea to have a standing committee, right? And then when you're going to right, like tie that to the political atmosphere in the city, you're gonna have a lot more turnover. So a lot less expertise that gets built up over time in the PUB board. So that may be, good for commissioners to have their favorite person there and to have, maybe, a tighter grip, but overall it's worse for the organizations. Organizations that have boards with very high turnovers, maybe boards, we have boards in the city that only have 2-year terms. By the time they're leaving their first term, they barely understand what is going on in the organization. And that actually leads to more CEO control. A CEO who can't, you can't regulate what they do. You can't, because nobody knows enough in order to really challenge what is going on. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Is well taken. I mean, I'm just worried about, we spent a lot of time trying to prevent politics from.
Well, I mean,
Entering in-
they would have to meet the characteristics of what we afford for them, by application. It's not one of those where it's going to be, I'm District 1 and I'm going to put my buddy. Well, I mean, if he meets the criteria that Mr. Cascos came up with, that they, have a degree, all of that, or they're a business person from that district.
But right now, we don't have any criteria really, for.
Like it's as it stands, I mean, if we do something that says, position 1 of the board shall be held by, an individual from, precinct 1 and appointed by the commissioner of precinct 1. And then we know, we can look at the current setting and say they're going to expire at this date. And so we know which ones are going to be, for which precinct, right?
Would be with each individual's term. So you have 4 that are getting elected come March, and then there's 3 2 years from now.
Right, but we have the dates. And
Yeah.
so we can, correlate whoever's getting out with who the elections are right
Exactly.
now and just set it forward and say, okay,
And then we'll
in
serve their 4 years.
2025, this is going to be this precinct, and that's the math that are.
And in point of fact, 2 things, the mayor doesn't have to appoint anybody, the mayor serves already. So that's actually, the turnover is 3 and 3, depending on what the mayor did. And we have that higher rate this time because of, as I understand it, the way positions are shaping up. But the other thing is, in point of fact, the people who are on the board for 8 years, they've been appointed twice already.
They carry on.
It, just because the commissioner changed doesn't mean that the board member had to change.
And that could still happen. I mean, it was just an idea, I think.
But in
good
honesty,
discussion.
I really believe that's what some people want. I really believe that the commission commission as a whole would be supportive of the idea. And I think that as we have been reminded tonight, the citizens expect something.
And it should be a true appointment, not, oh, well, you know what, this is my appointment. They don't have enough votes, but, oh, you know what, these three from at-large District 4 and the mayor, well, we have this appointee. Now it's getting kind of political.
But didn't we have a supermajority to appoint? And
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's, and it should be to where,
I'm not sure. I mean, that would
We
be
could suggest
interesting to do that, like we're doing with PUB, but
Again, if you consolidate the thoughts that we've had over the last few weeks, if one complements the other, that it would be a supermajority, it would be a nominee from the city, from Commissioner Place One, would nominate, but the supermajority would need to approve.
and I believe we'll table that and have our subcommittee go over it.
So yes, I guess I'm confused about that. So we already voted on having, for PUB, supermajority to appoint, really. So this would be to have another, like an alternative amendment to that?
no, the idea is, in the appointments from the city commission, that we would, state clearly that each commissioner would be able to appoint, one member for
But
the
each
different.
commissioner does not appoint. Maybe they nominate, which is
Let-
very
let me-
different from
Let me
appoint.
create a scenario.
Nominate, yeah, that they would nominate, sorry.
Maybe this hypothetical. So let's say I'm, David, you're, Commission, District 1. It's your time per the charter to nominate somebody to the PUB board. And you say, I want to nominate Daisy, and that doesn't get a supermajority. Then do you say, okay, well, then I want Tomas? And then that just keeps on going until there is a supermajority? Yep.
Or the position goes vacant.
What if there's no decision?
Because you'll still have someone sitting there.
What if there's no?
Not necessarily, I mean, if their term runs out.
When the term is out.
Right, so that,
Okay.
then the
Yeah.
position can
I
go
like that.
vacant. If you
it-
actually give, the responsibility to each single commissioner to appoint someone, then you're gonna run into that problem because you're gonna need the supermajority. And if a single commissioner is not able to come up with somebody who has the adequate qualifications, for that position, you're really like even decreasing the pool, you're really limiting who can be on this board, as opposed to what we have now, which is just the whole commission with a supermajority decides. They appoint as a whole. There's no appointment by a single commissioner. Even with this idea, the single commissioner still would not appoint. It's really just about nomination.
Yeah, that's, I was using the word appointment, but it's more a nomination.
I'm just worried about that scenario, and I think Tomas had it, just to further the idea, I'm not sure if I support it or not at this point, but, just if, let's say in the hypothetical that nobody gets a supermajority on David's nomination, then what would be the solution there? And Tomas suggested maybe the current person just continue on. I don't know.
Right,
Until replaced. I mean, that could work under.
You're gonna change the charter on that. You will change, you have to make an amendment because then the term will essentially not be the term, right? There wouldn't be 4-year terms. It would be, right, you would have, like, they would serve on the board until removed by somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, and.
You're talking about a lot of changes now.
Yeah, I mean, leaving it, the nomination process to the city commission, I think, is probably best, just because then I don't even know anymore. I mean, it's a difficult issue. I know it presents, like David said, it presents a change that the public can understand.
Hold
and
on to.
Hold on to. At the same time, I'm just, maybe I'm thinking too much on the fringes on what could potentially happen, but
No, I think that's what we're supposed to do, so.
yeah.
If that's a concern, that's valid. What I wanted to address is just, And it's happened here. I mean, and again, I'm by no means complaining, but let's say I have a motion in mind and then somebody jumps the gun and makes another motion before I do, right? So in this case, that way each of the commissioners are able to nominate the person as opposed to just anyone jumping the gun and
I think there's
and
value.
taking the advantage just because you made the motion before.
I think there's value to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I do. I just don't know.
And then on the back end, I was like, well, how would that work? How would that be managed? Then I was like, well, then you would align everything to the same as the term of the commissioner, just to make that clean. That way it's understood, dates are clear, processes are clear. So it's an idea. It's not. I mean,
And it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But
I think it's-
I say, let's table this,
One-
and I'm gonna do some research on it, what I want to let y'all know who nominated this past board. And I think some of them aren't even there anymore, but it's, to the effect where actually the nominations were coming from the same people. You know, it was the prior people that, oh, you know what, yeah, because they didn't have the supermajority when it was, say, District 2. And because it was more political and they didn't care for her, it's like, no, we're not gonna nominate your person. We have our own nominee, and they got their supermajority that way. That way, you can see, it should be a true nomination from the person incoming in. That way you feel more comfortable appointing someone or nominating someone to say, hey, you know what, I want to say they're going to do a good job. If I'm District 2 and I appoint Ms. Zamora, I know that, you know what, I don't have to worry about, she's going to be there to do what's right and just. With the incoming person that's in District 1 and they got appointed prior to, the end of when prior to the election, now it's one of those, okay, well, this isn't a person that I can work with, or they've tried to work with and they don't. eh, eh, So I want to table this and bring it back to discussion at the next meeting.
I don't think we're ready. I don't think I'm ready to table it yet. I think there's,
You still have to, okay,
yeah, I mean, I think that research is going to be great for next time. We can have it on next time. I don't mind tabling, but I don't know if we do it just yet.
I guess one of the things that I would point out, and if you, Mr. Chairman, it's fine with me if we table it. I think that I've made a couple of my points that I need to make, and I won't beat a dead horse on that. The one other thing that I would add is, based on the conversation here, you can see that there would be a lot of deliberation on the part of both the commissioner who nominates and the rest of the commission as to who is nominated. And that's what we want. We want a lot of deliberation. We want really good reasons why that person should serve. And we want to be able to do it without having a situation where somebody doesn't show up for the meeting and thus nothing can be done.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think, I think you're right, Vito. If we, like, if you come back in the next meeting and you show us that, like, out of the current board members, 4 were nominated by the same person, I would think that then that's an issue. So if that is the case, then it is a problem that that we could address here. My concern is that right now it seems like this is not, really, I feel like a lot of the things that we can talk about as far as amendments are things that are not really problems and that, have not led to problems. Yet, they feel like they could be solutions. But if you can present something, like that, like 4 were appointed by the same person, yeah, that's not really how maybe it could play out, in
Yeah, so
basic scenario, so.
I would just add for the subcommittee that in considering how you're going to be presenting things, I think this is going to have a huge impact, because if you're going to be saying on one end of the spectrum that you have, supermajority that's only for cause, then any suggestion that we're having that the commissioner appoints at some point in time, then that's gotta, come in well on the other side saying, or in the event that the commissioner does. And that's gotta be something that we're considering, because if not, then we're gonna have to amend whatever we've already submitted to the commission. And then in doing that, we're also gonna have to look at the current appointments. The initial one was in 2009, 10, 11, 11, 12, and 13. So you don't have the same staggered, appointments that you do as to the elections. And so when you're looking at that same way, you're going to have to make that, determination that, that they're appointed, and then how you're going to work out that's, how that staggered is going to fit into any of the other recommendations we make. And I think that's why it's the presentation of it, or trying to gather these ideas so they're not conflicting, or that if we're recommending this, this is why this isn't going to work. And I think that that's important to have this discussion.
A second.
I say, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Item number 5, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the absences of the Brownsville PUB Board of Directors.
Just a quick correction here. I wasn't the one who requested that. I think it was Michael, but same,
I'm sorry.
I guess no
We're
difference. Yeah.
Gossiping over here on the side of it. No, no, I mentioned this one. We know that the PUB board meets once a month, and that there are special meetings in the charter, and it's Article 6, Section 1F. Somebody can be absent 120 days continuously, which, what is that, 4 months?
Sounds like a lot.
It's a lot to me. And especially with the insights that Commissioner Galansky brought to the table the other day. You can run in and do one meeting and then not be there for 3 others, do 3 and then none. So, I don't want to be too strict on it, but I think that having a maybe 60-day, cutting it in half may be appropriate. Now, the charter also mentions that if you get consent from or approval from I think it's like unanimous approval from the existing members of the board, then you can be absent longer. I don't know if unanimous is appropriate there either. I mean, because, depending on the factions, you may not get to unanimity, but at the same time, we can maybe revisit that and maybe have a supermajority for an excused absence.
How about 20% of meetings? You cannot be absent more than 20% of meetings in a year, board meetings, and then supermajority approval for longer. Like somebody has cancer, needs treatment, okay, let's give them a chance.
Let me address what you just said, because I don't think that says that that's any way permissible. What this is essentially another form of removing a member. It doesn't say that they're permitted not to be absent. It says that if any board member for a period of 120 days shall, unless the member shall have been granted leave of absence, will be considered to have vacated that member's office as a member of the board.
Right.
And so basically, if they're not there for 120 days, then there's no action that needs to be taken to remove them. They are automatically vacated. I think that's a different issue than requiring them to attend, or that's a whole nother provision. This is related to if you basically abandon your post for a period of 120 days and no action is needed, you're considered to be gone. And so if you're asking for another issue that says you have to attend or otherwise, I think that, I guess that could be considered without, but I think that if it's without cause, then they could remove them for whatever reason anyway. Or if it's for cause, and I think the commission can come in and say, you've been absent from, 3 meetings, we're removing you, because that's unacceptable. But I do want to, that wouldn't be modified. I guess section 1F. 1F would just be automatic.
It's true.
my
I
opinion.
mean, I don't know if there's any other section that deals with the absences essentially. But maybe it is just reduce it down to 60. And then instead of automatic, be by supermajority or something. I'm just, I don't know if we need to create a whole new section. We could, and that might be better. 100
Well, I mean, we can vote on the intent and then council can figure out, how they would need to do that, right? So,
Well, I guess that's my question is,
Yeah.
what are
What's
you
the
trying,
intent?
what is the intent that you're trying to achieve here? Because again, this is just, if you don't show up for 120 days straight, then you're out.
yeah,
You're out.
I mean, I
You've
think,
abandoned
I
your
think from the
position.
accountability perspective,
That's a
I mean,
different
we
question.
just want to make sure that people that are serving on the board are attending meetings and actively participating, from the public's perspective. So I think it makes sense.
So how do we
The in-
decrease absences? I mean,
Yeah.
it might not even be a problem, though.
It may
Um,
not be a problem if they have without cause, like I think what you're suggesting. I mean, if they can remove without cause.
Well, at the same time, they can go 1 month, skip the next, go 1 month, skip the next. And that you're not going to get into this issue.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, that's why I'm saying there's two separate,
So you could do a
considerations that we're dealing with
percentage
here.
of times in a year.
excuse me?
You could do a percent of, percent of absences in a year.
Do we have any indication that there is a problem right now?
Well, when Commissioner Galowski came to speak with us a few weeks ago, she said that.
And
That was
perhaps,
problem.
Mr. Chairman, part of the research that you're working on in terms of appointments could be to track the dates, the attendance record for the last period of time. To see if it really is, I don't doubt that if Commissioner Galonsky said it was, then it is, but perhaps we could show some sort of a pattern that, of abuse.
That would be useful, yes.
That we could then
Yeah,
marginalize.
and I don't think in her mentioning it, and I don't know, just based off her comment, I don't think it's a massive issue. I think it's just an opportunity for us to clean up those possibilities, right? So even if if it's not happening today, we just want to make sure we hold people accountable. Maybe in the past it was, and just in the future, we can reduce the possibility for, people to get on boards and not participate. It's just an opportunity. Or the standing, city charter committee in the future, hopefully that's passed, this can be addressed, also in the future, right? So it'll have an opportunity.
I say move to table and I'll get the research.
Motion to table.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Next item, we have item number 6, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to qualifications of Brownsville PUB Board of Directors.
Yeah, this is Casco's,
At this point, I could motion to move to table
Just for it to remain on the table.
6,
Yeah.
6, 7, and 8 at the moment.
So if we remove them from the table right
No,
now, they won't be, I mean,
Oh,
sorry.
I need to remove it and then table it again?
No, I mean, just to remain on the table,
Yes.
that you're passing them. Yeah.
Yes.
You won't be able to give the commission an update on them, right? Because then it will be.
No, we
delayed.
have another meeting next week prior to it.
There's one
Okay.
more, there's one more
Yeah,
meeting
there's one more
before
meeting before
it
that.
goes to commission.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
would just say, and I'm okay with tabling, because I know Carlos was pretty adamant on some of these points. But yeah, we'll have to vote next week, I would say.
So
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a clarifying question of council? If Mr. Coscos has some specific recommendation that he wants to make and he forwarded it to you, can you then forward it to us individually for our consideration, only for consideration, not for?
You
Not for
can,
vote?
yes, you can look at it and think about it yourselves, but then only discuss it here
Okay.
in open.
Because I forwarded to Mr. Trevino a list of a definition of the breach of fiduciary responsibility, for instance, that I would like to see forwarded to the commissioner, to the committee members here, simply for consideration and better understanding of what I haven't been able to adequately explain. And so if Mr. Coscos is if it's feasible, legal, for him to forward to you and then you forward to us. That's what I'd like to see.
But I, that is basically what's already done here. He has put an item on here stating related to qualifications of PUB Board of Directors. Any more information or going back and forth should be done here in the meeting itself. I guess I'm not understanding your
No,
question.
no, it's my fault. Would you say that therefore that it is not feasible or practical for him to forward to us, here are the 5 or 6 things that I think should be considered as the qualifications? He can't be more specific about
No.
the qualification?
I think that's fine as long as there's no reasoning put behind it on his end.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that Mr. Costos could forward that logic to the city attorney's office after reviewing it to make sure it doesn't violate open meetings. It could be forwarded to us, at least for our thinking, not for any action until such time as we meet again. Maybe somebody could call him and say, hey, Carlos, give me a couple of bullets here.
They would go to you and then you would put it on our page that
Correct.
we're all on. Okay, yeah.
So.
Okay, so move to table 6, 7, 8.
To remain on the table, I make the motion.
Remain on the table, yes. I move to keep them on the table.
Yes, yeah. Keep it on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Item number 9, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to city commission member salary, compensation, and/or reimbursement.
Mr. Chair, do you have any updates on this?
Working on, so I was just gonna say to retable it.
Okay, can you tell us anything?
Well,
about-
I'm trying to get a scenario of the compensation that is being in cities like ours. I have found 2, but I don't want to base it just on those 2. I want to try, my time had run out on when I was researching the 2 that I have found, and they're out of state.
Yeah, I think they presented some options here, and if I
Yeah,
recall,
that way we can-
Laredo
because
was, for me, it was
for,
pretty interesting.
for me on this one is that there's never been a salary in ever. There was an increase, I believe, of $500 for cell phone, laptop, and I don't know what else. Yeah.
Since we're talking about it, can I remove from the table? So, because we're talking about it?
Yes, that's fine. Remove it from the table so you can
Yeah,
continue
Yeah,
discussion.
so,
Okay, I move to remove from the table.
okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, being that its salaries were never included in the history of being a commissioner or a mayor, being that this is a city, manager-run city, I wanted to at least get enough information, to say, you know what, okay, I can see us doing this, and do we have the budget for it also? Because at the moment, we don't have the budget for it. Then that would mean we would have to increase items that come to the city, like PUB would be increased from what they're giving to the city.
Yeah, I don't think we need to get into that level of detail.
Yeah, so,
If it passes, the city would have to figure out a way to make it happen, right? If something's voted on, if, for the charter by the public, by the citizens, and it passes, then the city would have to figure a way to make that happen.
yeah, no, but in the wording, I believe the compensation would have to be in there of what they're getting compensated.
Yeah, I mean, you can put like a
When it
number
goes to vote.
or a reference as Laredo did.
Because it just can't say, it can't just read that, salary compensation and
Well, no,
without an
that could be
amount.
up to the commissioners to decide. Like, we can just present it to them and they can decide if they think, X% of median income.
Okay.
And are you able to pull up the table that we were shown last time for this?
I could pull it up on my computer, but they're not gonna have it here. I don't know if they have it saved. Yoli, do you know if they have it saved over in the back?
Make a quick comment. Uh, It seems to me that knowing city commissioners and mayors for longer than anybody else at this table,
Are you sure
I,
about that?
I would, well, it is a sacrifice to serve as a city commissioner or the mayor. And there is economic impact. It can be favorable or unfavorable. For those that we would most likely want to vote for ourselves, it's generally unfavorable. Uh, I would think that the word a token appreciation for their role service, rather, what we want to prevent, I think, is making it look like it's a salary. But if it's some accommodation to see to it that a commissioner, for having given up certain things, is able to compensate for the expense of having been a commissioner, that might make sense. If we look like we're offering a payroll to a city commissioner, then I think it will go down to defeat, and it might even bring down everything else that was associated with that ballot.
So token of appreciation, is that how you
So,
were framing it?
well, for me, I wouldn't want to say the exact number necessarily, but I might put it in a ballpark of between $500 and $1,500 a month, depending if it's the mayor or just a regular city commissioner. Because it costs, as you well know, it costs you to serve in that role. You're taking time away from a business, you're going to meetings, you're spending money to do it. And so I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to that, but I'm afraid that if you say, let's make it $4,000 a month for a city commissioner, which would effectively be the salary for a lot of people in our town, then it becomes, I think it'll go down to defeat without any question, personally.
Right. I mean, if I'm speaking personally, I'm a working professional. My family relies on the income that I bring. I would not be able to ever run for office, ever before I'm retired, run for office in a position that doesn't pay, simply because I couldn't afford it. I do not come from a wealthy family. My family is very working class. I actually come from a very poor background. My family was in Section 8 housing as I grew up, right? We received food stamps. I'm actually a lot more representative of the the population in Brownsville. And since I do not have a wealthy family or a wealthy husband or a wealthy, patron, I simply couldn't afford to be in office and let go of my job for so many hours a week in order to, serve as commissioner, or really any other position that would require such time commitment. And I think it's really looking at who are the people who are able to serve, right? And are we really maybe even pushing those who serve to try to make up that income in different ways? And okay, so thank you. You were able to pull up the research that we saw last time. And I think a token of appreciation, right, is something that we could do. It would be a start, just moving in that direction, so that I think really, like, my goal is to have people who are really the average population of Brownsville to be able to serve in these positions, and for it not to be such a such a problem. Yeah, it's really a limitation right now. You would be opening the field to a lot more people who are working professionals.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I don't think increasing the salary to $1,000 a month is gonna all of a sudden have working professionals quit their jobs to go.
No,
and
it
do
won't, but
this.
it would be a step in the right direction.
And then I don't know if you want people to serve because they're gonna be compensated rather than they want to serve. And so I think there's a line that you gotta, take a look at as to, why you're doing something. I know they get compensated for travel whenever they go. They get, I assume they get a per diem or anything that they're going through. If there's political contributions and they use campaign funds for different deals. So that there are ways that they're being compensated. So I think, well, again, I don't disagree with you in principle. I think there's a lot more factors to come in here than just a simple deal of working professionals can't run for office. And I don't by any means think we're restricting how or who is running at this point.
What is their compensation right now? I know it's $10 to be at the meeting, but isn't there another compensation for their laptops, their cell phones?
I don't remember, but I
I don't know, finance director, they get an auto allowance. They get an auto allowance.
Allowance?
I think it's 5,000 or 8,000 a year.
Okay. 8,000 a year?
Compensation for travel and conferences like the Texas Municipal League or, International City Managers Association conferences. Those are types of things. They've also, we pay their, of course, their hotel, their lodging, and any travel costs associated with that in a per diem.
So under the compensation of vehicle use, they're getting 8,000 a year.
Let me double check that, but they do get an auto allowance. I just need to double check the figure.
Yeah.
But just so that we're clear, their compensation is only $10. These are what what you're asking and what you're discussing, that's not compensation. That is not something, that's reimbursement expenses. Those are two separate issues. I just pulled up and put on the screen again what it says in regard to compensation.
Could we make a motion, and then leave it open-ended to, maybe for the city attorney's office to discuss or, to come up with maybe recommendations as to what could be feasible? If we make a a motion to explore the possibilities?
What would you be requesting our office to come up with recommendations for?
It could be, maybe different, like different ideas for what you know, a compensation of token or of appreciation could look like. Is that possible? Without us really, uh, defining an amount.
I mean, you all can always make a recommendation to city commission saying that you believe there should be more compensation versus what it says right now regard to the $10 and see if they accept or reject that.
I think that's a better idea.
And for our office to come up with an amount, I think that's a little bit out of our purview since we would be setting our boss's basically salary. I mean, it doesn't quite meet the smell test, I think.
Okay. So then I make a motion to recommend to city commission that an amendment to increase the current compensation of $10 be be submitted to the voters.
Can I offer a slight amendment to the language on that? And you can reject it if you want to. not unheard of. What if we said, based on the research that's already been done, it should be the starting point for consideration of that increase? In other words, the research that
Trevino?
it was done before Trevino, but I don't remember exactly who brought us the research, but this research that shows other cities in Texas we would just add that this is demonstrative of the fact that other cities do this. And we can use this research as perhaps a starting point.
I withdraw my motion. Can you please make it?
No. I'm just asking, just add that element
Oh, no, right, I agree. But it's part of the motion?
as part of the motion that we recommend to the city commission that the income, a specific compensation for commissioners and mayor be reconsidered, and that the research that has already been done would be the basis of their deliberations, if they wanted to.
Okay,
They
I
wouldn't
make that
have to do
motion.
it At all.
I like it, but I think she's writing it still.
So that I'm, I guess, understanding it's basically motion to have the commission consider what I would call Exhibit A in determining a salary for themselves in the body.
Future.
Or
And they,
so just look at this and make a decision. whether-
well, yeah, and they could still come back and say, nah,
Are these all cities that have strong mayor or weak mayor systems or whatever? If we can put it just another column, because if there's no city manager, because maybe some of these big places don't have a city manager, like the mayor is the city manager, and therefore compensation is appropriate. But
Looking at all of these, I believe these are all city manager.
all city manager,
I'm doing a quick calculation in my head by looking at them, but I
okay,
believe they all
just to
are.
add to the Exhibit A that these are all.
and in point of fact, I believe Mr. Flores did include that information in his original research. He just didn't show it to us.
I guess prior to doing that, I'd want to make sure we're doing apples to apples here and that this is compensation the same as what is in our charter, or is this compensation which includes other benefits? Are we talking apples to apples on these numbers here?
Right. For instance, your very good point about whether it is compensation or reimbursement. If this is actual compensation, that's one thing. If it's reimbursement for expenses, that's a different story. It's a really good point that you made.
From what I recall from the presentation, this summation is information from their charters. So this would be compensation. This is simply compensation.
Okay, so then did you get what Mr. Merrill was saying? The modification to the motion? So should I state it over or?
You withdrew the first one, correct?
Right, okay.
So
but-
yes,
Okay, so I make a motion to,
this is what I wrote down.
Okay.
I wrote, you make a motion to recommend that compensation for the city commission and the mayor be reconsidered by them, and that they consider the research already done as the basis of their consideration.
perfect. I make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a second by Mr. Merrill. All in favor?
Okay, sorry, could you repeat it?
That the motion is recommending that compensation for the city commission and the mayor be reconsidered, and that the research that has already been done be the basis for this reconsideration and their deliberation.
That way, we're not recommending a specific number. We're just saying, hey, look what other cities are doing. Consider it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Item number 10, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to proposed amendments to Brownsville City Charter submitted by the city attorneys and city managers' offices, including but not limited to Article 6.
I motion to remove from the table.
This is if we're gonna add more items?
What's tabled, so just to talk about it.
Okay,
Any
I
future
second
item?
that motion.
Oh, I don't, this one is not tabled, right?
10?
No, I'm sorry, number 10. Sorry.
But this was to,
I think this is the one that you all.
yeah, this is for y'all's. So we
You had,
tabled it because
recommendations from
Will
the commission.
asked to table it at the last meeting.
And this is the part of the workshop presentation that he
Which
wants.
We need to retable.
Yes,
So motion to
continue on the
retable.
table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Item number 11, consideration, discussion, and action, if any, related to the setting of future agenda items.
Anyone have any?
Well,
items
I think from the PUB side, we're almost done, except the ones that Carlos Cascos has proposed. And I think those we have discussed in the past, and we will finalize, I guess, upon his return next meeting. Anything else around PUB? At this point?
Anyone? I would like to bring back term limits at our next meeting
Term limits
for
for
election.
city commissioners
commission.
and mayor.
And mayor. To put it back the way we had it, where it was, you ran.
No term limits is what you're
No,
asking.
not no term limits. We had proposed it a certain way and it got changed. I would like to propose it back to the original, the way it was, not to take away term limits. But when it was presented, the way we came up with it is you ran for district commissioner. And you served 2 terms. And from there, you could serve 2 terms at large and then, or may, no. No, it was 2 terms as a district commissioner, 2 terms at large, and 2 terms as mayor. Yeah.
So a
And then
person
it
could
got
serve,
changed to where it was only, it was 2, 2, 2. And then it went to just 2 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, we could disagree, I don't remember it that way, but by all means, put it on the
Yeah.
agenda. And if that's a suggestion that you want to change it to, or
Yeah.
back to what we thought. by all means.
The mayor is at large.
Yeah.
I can bring the notes back from
Good.
that
Yeah.
too.
And I wasn't here.
From the COVID year?
I wasn't here, so I don't have any background information.
We'll go ahead and add that on the next agenda.
Thank you. Yeah.
I had also requested the previous meeting on the ADUs. I didn't
That's
see
right.
that here. Maybe that's what caused the confusion on the motion with yours, but
Maybe.
And what specifically
yeah, so ADUs are the
was your request?
to formalize in the charter on how to manage additional dwelling units.
Anybody have anything else?
no, but I have a question. Is there anything more specific that you can,
Well, I need to do more research. Last time I just wanted to get it on the table, so I'll leave it general, and then hopefully I can provide more information. Not hopefully, I will provide more information next week. Next meeting, yeah.
Anyone else? Motion to adjourn?
make a motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed can sit here by yourself.
It is 7:14, meeting has ended.
Thank you.